Rick Bucher, do the Sixers need to blow it up?
No, they don't need to blow it up. What, you're going to blow it up? You just made it to the second round of the playoffs, and you were competitive in spite of the fact that James Harden has whatever is ailing James Harden. Joel Embiid playing with an orbital fracture and a torn ligament in his thumb. Obviously, they weren't going to move off of Doc Rivers. They owe him $24 million more over the next 3 years. And I don't know that there's a coach out there for, as much as I have an issue with Doc Rivers being so defensive and saying, I'm doing a great job. Slow down, Doc. You're not doing a great job, okay? But that said, what other coach are you going to get who has a championship ring in his cabinet and has the experience of coaching superstar players? Look, if you give me a great alternative, then I'm willing to listen and say we'll move on from Doc Rivers. But obviously, Daryl Morey knows that he can't do that. I look at this team. I look at what they have. I look at what they have accomplished. Look, this is, J-Mac, this is a little bit like expecting that if you go out on a date or you're dating somebody and it doesn't end up in marriage, it's a failure. We need to blow it up. I need to move on and get on to something else. Look, if you have a good time, if you make some memories, that's a success. And this is the equivalent of that. How many teams are getting as far as the Philadelphia 76ers? How many of them have won as many games in the regular season as the Philadelphia 76ers? And how many of them have a bona fide MVP candidate still in his prime, with young players like Matisse Thybulle and Tyrese Maxey who are only going to get better? So, no. Do they need to tweak it? Sure. They can find something that makes sense, but I could point to injury and lack of cohesion and time together as much as anything for why the Philadelphia 76ers wound up where they did.
Geez, Rick, if I didn't know better, I thought you were neighbors with Doc Rivers and best buddies with James Harden. Are you kidding me? Rick, you can't be serious. This is an unmitigated disaster. We did a show here on this network, I don't know, 2 months ago, and I tried to warn everybody. I said, hey, people that think Embiid and Harden's going to work, you got another thing coming. They are not Kobe and Shaq. That is not going to happen. Rick, James Harden is not suddenly going to lose 20 pounds in the offseason and really get in great shape and get his act together. This is just a poor fit. And Jimmy Butler, yes, of Miami, Jimmy Butler, that dog, said it best when he walked off the floor and said, they picked Tobias Harris over me. Did you see how soft that team was? I know we want to defend Embiid because everybody loves Joel Embiid. Everybody loves him. He's playing with thumb injury, Jason. His face is broken. Cut the guy some slack. Okay, you cut him some slack last year after he had 8 turnovers in Game 7 at home against the Hawks when they choked. And they blamed it on Ben Simmons. And now, hey, let's play the blame game and dump it on James Harden. Why? This is what James Harden does, Rick. Look at his history. James Harden is a choke artist when it matters most. Games 5, 6, 7, that's what he does. This should not be a surprise. Doc Rivers, I cannot believe they're bringing him back. I think clearly the move is, hey, James, you don't want to opt in, because if you do, you're probably not going to see another contract with us. You might make $47 million next year, but we don't want you at 34, 35, 36 years old. Harden needs to opt out. He needs to, if he wants to elongate his career, take 25, 28 million over 3 or 4 years. Let them dump Tobias Harris, and they got to make a move for somebody. I don't know if it's Damian Lillard. I don't know if it's a play for Zach LaVine, but something has to be done. You can't keep banging your head against the wall, Rick, and expect something different is going to happen. Doc Rivers is delusional. Wait. Joel Embiid is overrated, and the Sixers ain't going nowhere unless they blow it up.
Wow. J-Mac, what banging their head against the wall? How many times have they had a run with James Harden and Joel Embiid and this crew? How many times have they had the opportunity? 1, right? And they got to the second round of the playoffs. They knocked off the Toronto Raptors, who were supposed to be this dangerous team that was going to test them, and that did not happen. And as I look around the Eastern Conference, outside of the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Milwaukee Bucks at some point are going to have to make some decisions on Brook Lopez and a couple other guys, who else am I looking at as these incredible contenders that the Philadelphia 76ers have to get by, that are going to be there? The Boston Celtics? I don't think so. Miami Heat? I don't think so. Philadelphia 76ers. And you're, look, I was there with you in terms of, if you're going to compare James Harden and Joel Embiid to Kobe and Shaq, that's setting the bar at a very elite level. If that's what you're expecting, then you're expecting to get married, going back to my analogy about what makes for a successful relationship. But if you are a contender year after year, and while I do have questions about where James Harden is right now, if anybody is going to get to James Harden and get him to buy in, it's going to be his good friend Daryl Morey, the president of the 76ers. This idea that you're good at managing somebody else's money. You're telling James, hey, listen, don't take the 47 for 1 year. I think you should opt out and take 24 for, what was it, 3 years? Is that 24 per? Are we talking that's 72 then for 3? Or are you actually thinking that he's going to take 24 over the course of 3 years?
Yeah,
he's basically going to take what Doc Rivers is getting paid.
No, you take a 3 or 4 year deal and you lengthen out the process in the window for the process, which appears to be a train wreck. But I want to just go back. Rick, the idea that Boston is not as good as Philly is comical, okay? And secondly, Miami, okay, you just heard Doc Rivers say, I didn't realize Miami was this tough. Like, they out-toughed us. We're not tough. Like, this isn't an offseason where you can go to the gym and hire one of these Instagram trainers and get tough. You don't all of a sudden go to the store and just buy some toughness. This isn't like lifting weights or improving your jump shot. Toughness is in your DNA. The Sixers don't have it. They don't have any of it. And now they got a situation where it's like, who were their clutch guys? Who were the guys who showed up in the series? Well, Tyrese Maxey, who we like. Shake Milton, he wanted it.
Only going to get better.
Shake Milton wanted it, but how is he going to get better when James Harden is playing 35 minutes a game and chewing up all the salary? And then you got Tobias Harris, who's making, I don't know, $35 million a year. This team is so poorly constructed. I know your guy Morey tried to make lemonade out of lemons, right? He had a tough situation with Ben Simmons. Yeah. He did the best he could. Well, you know what? You got to have another bite at the apple this year. Not that different from the Lakers, who tried to change it up last summer. Spectacular disaster with Russell Westbrook. You know what? You got to plow through it. Stop looking back. Let's look forward. You've got to make moves to make this team better. And Philadelphia, they got to move Harris, and they got to talk to James Harden about his contract. Because, Rick, if he's making $47 million next year, it's going to be another trade wreck in the postseason again.
Why? Well, it's 1 year. It's 1 year, and you have him from the beginning of the year. So it's not like you're losing pieces as a result of keeping James Harden if he opts in for 1 more year. In fact, it puts pressure on him if he wants to extend that if he wants to get another contract, then you need to come correct, and you need to be in some kind of a shape. And you're saying that Joel Embiid, who's played with an orbital fracture and a torn ligament in his thumb and his shooting thumb, is not tough?
That's what Doc
Rivers said.
You're
telling me that Tyrese Maxey is not tough? You're telling me that Matisse Thybulle is not tough? Maybe Miami was a little tougher than Doc Rivers expected, which I'm thinking, Doc Rivers, where have you been? The Miami Heat with Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, led by Jimmy Butler, are always going to be tough. And the reality is they're not that tough. They're still playing Tyler Hero. They're still trying to find a way to get their money out of Duncan Robinson. They're not that tough. They're just tougher. They prove to be a little bit tougher, a little more disciplined, a little more conditioned than the Philadelphia 76ers. But if I look at the scope of the Eastern Conference, again, I'm with you in terms of having to tweak it somehow, some way. But this idea that you're blowing it up, we're going to get rid of James Harden, we're going to get rid of Doc Rivers, well, let's see what we could get for Joel Embiid. Like, you mentioned the Lakers. Yeah. That's a perfect example. They essentially blew it up. How did that work? Where did that end up? That's the danger. You can always tell me, go dump Tobias Harris. Go blow it up. Yeah, you know what you got when you blow it up? You got a crater, and now you got to fill it. And you tell me what I'm filling it with. I'm blowing up the Philadelphia 76ers.
You know what I'm filling it with? I'm filling the top of the East with Brooklyn, who we neglected to talk about. They have this guy named Kevin Durant who's still breathing. And Atlanta, which extinguished your Sixers last postseason. Trae Young will be back. They, by the way, will be making some changes.
A year ago. Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, where's the Atlanta Hawks? Where are the Brooklyn
They're going to make some moves.
Listen,
let's
not bag on the Philadelphia 76ers.
If you're defending the Sixers.
If we're talking about the last 2 years, if you want to combine last year and this year, are you telling me that the Philadelphia 76ers collectively over these 2 years didn't do better than the Miami Heat? didn't do better than the Brooklyn Nets? Like, go down the list of your favorite teams, and the Philadelphia 76ers at least made the second round and were competitive in the second round both of the last 2 years. You can't say that about your favorite teams.
They made the second round awesome, and they lost at home in each of the second rounds, okay? Lost each of them at home, and they got embarrassed by the Hawks, and now, of course, the Heat.